Welcome to Coach Bennett's podcast, where every run has a purpose, where kindness is hardcore, where this is about running, and this is not about running, where every starting line is a finish line in disguise, where rambling still gets you where you need to be, where pineapple will never ruin your pizza, and the sodas, adult and not adult kind, are always cold, and where there is room on the starting line for everybody. I'm Coach Bennett. Thank you for letting me be a part of your day. Let's get started.
Welcome back to Coach Bennett's podcast. That's right. This is episode, I think, 133. And it's been a minute since we've had a podcast because the last one I put out was in 2025, which means this is the first podcast of 2026, which is super exciting. And let me now say thank you, everybody, for being patient. I know it was kind of like, wait, where's the new podcast? Because like I said, this is episode 133. I'm pretty sure that there were 133 podcasts put out in 134 weeks, which means in 2.5 years, there was one off week, and now I've just given you a couple, and I'll tell you why. It was the end of the year. We were traveling, a lot of family obligations, very, very busy, and guess what? I know all of you are busy too. So I wasn't planning on it being like 3 weeks in a row. I was planning on it being like 1 week off, and then things were busy and it became 2 weeks off, and then I just said, you know what? I'm going to get around to it when I get around to it, and once I get around to it, we will be back, okay? Which means you can expect new podcasts dropping every single week for the rest of 2026, unless something crazy happens. But the point is, we're back, and this is a fun one. It's called Right Here, Right Now, so special tip of the cap to both, I guess, Jesus Jones, which is a band, I think it's a British band, and also Van Halen. Some of you would refer to it as Van Hagar because it was Sammy Hagar as the lead singer when they played Right Now. But anyway, the point is I want to talk about now, today, here, and we're going to kind of talk about why I want to do that based around the time of the year, even though this is a really good conversation to have at any time of year. But we're now into that third week of January. This is where New Year's resolutions start to get a little funky. I made a joke the other day to somebody who asked me to speak to a group, and they said, hey, maybe you could talk about New Year's resolutions and tips for New Year's resolutions. And I said, yeah, that's perfect timing because everyone's New Year's resolution has about one more week until they stop. And I was joking, but it's true. Right around the third week of January is when people kind of ditch their resolutions. And I thought, you know what? This means this is where some people are going to kind of take their eye off the ball, lose focus, maybe miss a few days of whatever it is that they were going after, whatever that goal was, whatever the challenge was that they had set for themselves. And maybe we can talk about how they can get back on the horse. All right. And it doesn't mean they have to continue the goal. Maybe the New Year's resolution that they set wasn't the right thing to resolve to do. Maybe it was. Maybe they just have to adjust a few things. Remember, that's what coaching is. It's making adjustments to the training plan, not writing the training plan. So I thought this would be a really, really good idea. And I'll go over a couple of the coaching principles that basically make up my philosophy around the idea of right here, right now. And I'm just going to start by saying I usually, when I coach and I work with somebody and I find out what their goal is, I live in the future for a little while. I'll go to the completion of the goal or the accomplishment of the goal. So I'll start with like, okay, maybe your goal is I want to run 10K without stopping. I'm just making it up. So I will get to that. Okay, we can run 10,000 meters without stopping. That's our goal. All right, now what does that mean we can do a week prior to that? What can we do 2 weeks prior to that? And I start moving closer and closer to the present, not knowing how far out in the future we are, because we have to figure out what is the distance between the completion of the goal and what we can accomplish today. Today suddenly becomes very important. The future is kind of untethered. It can be way out into the future, it can be a lot closer, but it's all going to be based on today. Who are you today, and what can you do today? So what I want to do is at least give you the, a little background about I'm usually living in a couple of, different timelines, so to speak, as a coach. But the most important one is the present timeline, today. And I get very excited about today. And another thing that I just want to, maybe discuss right off the bat, 'cause I think it's important, because a lot of times people will say, like, geez, you're so optimistic, and like maybe overly optimistic. And I get the sense that a lot of people don't really know what being optimistic means. And I think what happens is a lot of people confuse certain terms. And I'll give you like an example. I think a lot of people confuse optimism and pessimism and realism. They confuse being pessimistic, optimistic, realistic, and they don't really know how these three things work together. And I think it comes really down to the fact that a lot of people think that the opposite of optimistic is realistic, that they think you can't be both, and that's just not true. And yes, I'm going to give you a definition because that's just how I do, but the definition for optimistic is reflecting a favorable view of events and conditions and the expectation of a positive outcome. All right, that's what it means. That's definition 2. Definition 1, disposed to take a favorable view of events or conditions and to expect the most favorable outcome. You can choose either one. I'm usually, I'm a second definition guy, but I just want to focus a little bit on the definition of optimism, but I also want to give you a couple of the synonyms for optimistic, okay? Assured, cheerful, encouraged, happy, hopeful, okay? Like, those are the synonyms associated with optimism. This is super important because what I want you to do is listen to what pessimistic is, all right? So if we go to pessimistic, the definition of pessimistic, all right, pertaining to or characterized by pessimism or a tendency to expect only bad outcomes, gloomy, joyless, unhopeful. Now, just listen to that. Tendency to expect only bad outcomes, gloomy, joyless, unhopeful. So if we'll get realistic in a second. We'll get too realistic in a second. But if you just think of the difference between those two, how optimistic is someone who's prone to think there will be favorable outcomes, okay? That this is going to work out, as opposed to someone who thinks it's not going to work out. Now, you could say both of these are not incorporating a sense of reality, which I disagree, but let's just pretend reality's not involved. Somebody's predisposed to think this isn't going to work out. Somebody's predisposed to think this is going to work out. Somebody's predisposed to being hopeful. Somebody's predisposed to being hopeless. Now, from a coaching perspective, when we have to do work, keep in mind the work we're doing today is in the hopes that we will improve, that we will get better, that we will get closer to achieving whatever that said goal is. The one I gave you was we can run 10,000 meters without stopping. Imagine you're an optimistic athlete and imagine you're a pessimistic athlete. It doesn't work as a pessimistic athlete. It doesn't. The entire foundation of today when it comes to coaching and that relationship with an athlete is based on the idea of optimism, that what we're doing today is going to move us forward. It is going to progress us closer to whatever our goal is. Think about that. If you're pessimistic and you think this isn't going to work out, how are we ever going to achieve what we need to achieve today in the hopes of getting closer to where we want to go? Meaning tomorrow we're a little better because of today. And I don't know how many tomorrows until we get to that 10K without you stopping. It's going to rely on you showing up day after day after day in the hopes of doing the work you need to do to get better. Now, if you don't believe you're going to get better, you're going to stop showing up. So you have to be an optimist to be an athlete, or I should say you have to be an optimist to be an athlete that has any real shot at getting close to their future potential. And the only way you can get closer to your future potential is by taking advantage of your current potential. Hence, today, right here, right now, can we harness the traits, the talents, the perseverance, the discipline, the hope, the faith that we have today in such a way that we can become better by tomorrow, so we can once again harness our energies tomorrow, which is now a future today, in order to get better for that future tomorrow, and so on and so forth until we get to that point where we can run 10K in a row. So me, when people tell me, well, geez, you seem overly optimistic, I think, well, I don't know about that. I think I'm exactly as optimistic as I need to be, as is essential to be as a coach. Okay, realistic. Here's the definition. Number one, interested in, concerned with, or based on what is real or practical. Now, here's the thing. From a coaching perspective, you have to be realistic. Like I said, when I start a training plan, I start at the end. I work my way until we get to today. So I know what can we do today that's based on being realistic, right? Can we do what we can do today? Now, here's where the optimism comes in. I believe we can. I believe we can do what we can do today, which is all I can ask of an athlete. I can't ask you to do something you can't do. And this is the thing. We may not know whether you can do something or not, right? So when I ask you, can you try to do this under my assumptions, I'm basing it on the fact that I believe there's a good chance you can do it. Not no chance. I believe there's a good chance you can do it. It doesn't mean I know for a fact that you can do it. It doesn't mean that it's guaranteed that you can do it. This is where my optimism comes in there. Maybe you can't means maybe you can. I focus on the maybe you can. Let's set up the environment where the maybe you can has a better chance than the maybe you can't. And then, if you cannot do it, can we learn from this? So when we try again, there's a better chance that you can. There's even my optimism when there is, for lack of a better term, failure, or we don't get as far as we wanted to, or we don't achieve what we had planned on achieving today. Okay, here's where being realistic comes in. We didn't achieve what we wanted to achieve today. Could be a whole host of reasons, by the way. It's not just whether or not the athlete can do it. Sometimes it's the conditions, the environments don't allow us to do what we want to do. And again, I'll go back to that kind of training plan. Like the goal is we find out that it's going to take probably 8 to 10 weeks for you to run a 10K without stopping. And as we move back, that's based on the fact that today you can run for about 10 minutes. Okay? I'm not worried about distance. You can run for about 10 minutes. So what we do is we want to go outside and we want to run for 10 minutes. But you know what? You got a call and you have to go into work and we're not going to be able to get together and do the 10 minutes. Or you know what? You were able to get a second shift and that's going to take you straight into tomorrow. So we adjust, right? We adjust. That's the reality of the situation. Now, the pessimist would say, look, I knew this was going to happen. I told you this was going to happen. It's not going to work out. I couldn't come to practice today. The double shift came in. I don't even know why I have this as a goal. I'm not going to be able to get the goal. Okay, valid if you're a pessimist to talk that way. The optimist would say, hey, and I'll do this as the optimist coach. Hey, okay, we didn't get to do the 10 minutes today. That's fine. What I don't want you to do is stress about this because tomorrow you have an opening. We're going to do the 10 minutes tomorrow. If you beat yourself up about today, if you stress out about today, if you get overly negative about today, it's going to affect tomorrow. So what we can do is we can get excited about the fact that we're going to meet up tomorrow. We can plan accordingly for tomorrow. There's still work we can do. You can leave your shoes out. You can make sure that you've got your water bottle. You can make sure that your meals are set up tomorrow. So when we do meet, we're in an even better position than maybe we would have been in today. That's how I operate as a coach, because if we cannot do what I wanted us to do today, My hope is for us to do what we can do today. You've probably done runs with me where I've brought this up, and I guess it was most famously in the 5-minute run, which came out years and years and years ago, where I tell people if you can't do the run you want to do the run you can do. See, that is one of the pillars of my foundation as a coach, because it operates in the here and the now. It operates as an optimist that maybe we couldn't get in a 10K run today, or a 30-minute run today, or a speed workout today. What could we get in, though? I know we wanted to do those things, but because of weather, because of obligations, because of time crunches, we weren't able to do it. What can we do? And for me, a lot of people would say, oh, well, it's either all or nothing. That's not true. I cannot operate like that as a coach. I don't have the luxury of thinking it's all or nothing, because I have to work with today, with individuals today. And I realize I don't have the luxury to waste a day with that kind of a mentality. If it's snowing and we can't run outside, can we use the hallways? If it's lightning outside and we can't get outside, is there a chance that we can get on a treadmill? If we don't have access to running because there's ice everywhere and ice is dangerous, well, can we dance inside? Can we do a cardio workout where we're getting our heart rate up and we are moving and we're sweating? Can we do something like that? How do we make the best situation out of this less than best situation? What can we do right here, right now? We can complain, we can whine, we can think about how great it would have been if we could have just done what we had originally set out to do. But none of that helps us get better. None of that fills up our time that we have to practice, to work, to get better. So my question is always, okay, considering this is reality, what's the best we can do with this current reality? And that's why I think it's important and a choice. Do you want to be optimistic? Do you want to be pessimistic? Do you want to make the most of this situation, which may not be the best situation? And that's not what optimism is about. It's not about saying this is the best that can happen. It's making the best with what has happened. That's what optimism is. It's looking at what you've got, especially when it's not everything you need, and saying, what can I do with this? I try to remind people that being optimistic isn't about ignoring the bad stuff that's going on. It's not about, pretending that negative things don't happen. Being optimistic is making sure you don't ignore the good things that are happening. It's making sure that you don't ignore the starting lines you still have in front of you, the possibilities that you still have, the opportunities you can grab. It's making sure you make the most of what you've got. That's not the same as saying that everything you've got is the most you could get. That's not it. So it's important, I think, sometimes as athletes to think like a coach, to remember that, yes, maybe this isn't where I want to be right now. Maybe yesterday wasn't the way I wanted yesterday to pan out. Maybe this is not where I want to be. But guess what? Start with being realistic. It is where you are. I mean, let's just deal with it. This is where you are. And I think right now, it's an important conversation to have, especially if you're struggling with a resolution or a goal and it doesn't seem like you're progressing as fast as you want. Okay, fine. That's totally legitimate. I'm not one of those people that's going to ignore the fact that you're disappointed with, the rate of your progression. But from a coaching perspective, it doesn't really change the fact that here we are today. What can we do? All right? You can be disappointed. That's fine. But be realistic. This is where you are. Now what can we do? What's the most we can do? What's the best that we can do? What's something different that we can do? What's something exciting that we can do? What's something fun that we can do? What's something we can do to help you get better? Let's do something. Like I tell you, I'm a verbs dude. I love verbs. Verbs only exist in the present. as far as I'm concerned as a coach. We can talk about all the running we're going to do in the future, and we can think about all of the running we've done in the past. None of that helps us get any fitter. What are we going to do today? And this goes for even people that are hurt and they can't run. Okay, yes, that is not fun. If you're hurt, sick, injured, you can't run, how do I get better at running? Well, there's lots of different parts of a runner that help that runner get better at running. And yes, you can be down, you can be negative, but being pessimistic about being hurt or sick doesn't help you heal any faster. It doesn't. It's not going to aid your recovery to be pessimistic. Again, I'm not saying to be unrealistic. I'm saying being pessimistic, prone to thinking the worst is going to happen. Now, you can be optimistic and you can be prepared and acknowledge the worst that can happen. In fact, I think you should be prepared for when things don't work out. I think you should be thinking about, you know what? You could get sick, you could get hurt, you could get injured. When you're healthy, you can think these things, but that's not how you live your life, thinking I'm going to get sick, I'm going to get hurt, I'm going to get injured. What you do is you try to mitigate the chances of any of those things happening. You actively do things to mitigate that. You're not pessimistic if you're taking into account the reality that those things may occur. Of course they may occur. It doesn't make you less optimistic. In fact, by doing those things like strength training, staying hydrated, working on your sleep, you're showing that you believe that these things will help, hopefully, the best outcome to occur, which is staying healthy, staying injury-free. That's why we do those things. See, that's why I'm saying, it's best for an athlete's potential to be optimistic. I mean, you have to. I believe. I know I said that at the beginning of this, but that's why I think it's so important. How can you do any training if you don't believe it's going to help you? Why would you do the training if you think it's not going to work out? How can you continue show up at starting line after starting line? Guess what? This is about running. This is not about running. How can you study for an exam? How can you work on a project? How can you volunteer if you think it just doesn't matter? Because that's what a pessimist believes. The worst possible outcome is going to occur, as opposed to an optimist who thinks there is a really good chance that something positive, the best outcome, is going to occur. And that's why I'm saying you can marry reality to optimism. You can't really marry reality to pessimism. Not as an athlete, because it negates the work you do if you're a pessimist. Why work on this drill? It's not going to help. Why do the run? I'm not going to get better. Why do the speed workout? I'm not going to get faster. That just doesn't make sense. So I think it's important from a coaching perspective to make sure the athletes are realistic. That's where the training comes from, but optimistic. That's where the belief comes that this training is worthwhile. That if I do the training I'm capable of doing consistently, it will lead me to do something maybe I've never been able to do before. You can't be pessimistic and believe that. So if you're someone who thinks you're very pessimistic, but you're an athlete and you do training and you set big goals and you go after them, newsflash, I think you're more of an optimist than you believe. And if you are an optimist, don't let people think that you're just living in the clouds, some dreamer. There's a difference between having dreams and working towards them and having dreams and dreaming about them. Very different. And I think you need to own some of your badassery, all of you out there that 3 weeks into this new year are finding starting lines and crossing them, even if things aren't going as well as you thought. If you're someone out there who day in and day out with ups and downs, the valleys, the peaks, is saying, guess what? I'm going to give my best today. That doesn't have to be your best ever. You may be better in the future. You may have been better, however you define it, in the past. That's not what being your best is about. Your best is always about the present. Can you give your best today? Can you try your best today? Because if you do that, you are at your best. So, you have an easy run today. Yeah, it's cloudy, it's starting to drizzle, you don't have the motivation, you're low on inspiration. Yes, okay, can you do your best to do this easy run as best as you can? Can you? I mean, considering the fact that you're not wildly motivated and charging out the door, okay, be realistic. You're not inspired and motivated to go for a run today, but can you still do it? Or maybe you just got a call. You got to come into work a little bit earlier. So that 50-minute run now has to be a 25-minute run. Okay, now it's not all or nothing. It's 25 minutes or less. That's it. And it could be 20 minutes. It could be 50 minutes. The point is you have a window now of 25. I know it was 50. You're not going to get 50. You have 25 minutes. We can be pessimistic about the fact that we're not doing 50 minutes. Just be realistic. We don't have the time to do it. It's going to happen. Life's going to get in the way sometimes if you're running. That's the trade-off. And I'm fine with that trade-off. It happens. But if we have 25 minutes, we could do a great 25 minutes. So let's do that. I don't have the luxury to be ticked off for very long about the fact that we no longer have 50 minutes. As a coach, I don't. I have to, in the moment, realize this is the best we can do. So let's do the best we can do with what we've got. And we got 25 minutes. Fine. And you know what I'm grateful for? The fact that it's 25 and not 5. Or the fact that it's 25 and not 0. Would I have liked 50? Yeah, of course. I'm not afraid to admit that. That doesn't make me pessimistic to say, yeah, I'd rather have 50, but I got 25. This is what I'm going to do. I mean, these are little shifts that if you see yourself as someone who gets into a pessimistic bent, like I had this, New Year's resolution and I got to like January 19th and then I missed 5 days and it's all over and it sucks and why did I even do this? And I'm not any good. I never follow through on anything. Okay, you've missed 5 days. Can we run today? Yeah, but I missed 5 days. No, I know that. There's nothing I can do to change that. You missed 5 days. Kind of sucks. I'm with you. Like you wanted to run 3 of those days. You missed all of them. But there's nothing else we can do about that. My DeLorean's in the shop. My flux capacitor's at 0. I can't help you with that. What we can do is focus on right here, right now. We can get in a run today. We're going to have to make some adjustments because you've missed a couple of days. That's fine. But I'll tell you what, missing 5 days is one thing. What we can do is check it right here, right? So instead of missing 6 days, we can block it at 5, which to me, from a coach, that's great. That's awesome. Because right now, the alternative isn't not missing those days. That's no longer an alternative. Day's gone. What do we have left? We have today. Let's go for a run. And now, being the optimist, that's the best possible situation we could have. As far as I'm concerned, things worked out pretty favorably. We were on our way to missing 6 days. Yeah, we missed 5. Am I excited about that? I already said no. But guess what? I'm excited that it's not 6. And that's the world coaches, at least good coaches, I think, or coaches that are trying their best to help their athletes become their best. That's where they have to operate. It's that optimism and that realism. It's being optimistic and realistic. And yes, the battle is against pessimistic. And I see sometimes people saying, oh, toxic optimism or something like that. And it's just like, no, you're just a drag, man. You don't understand. And again, because I'm not talking about people that say like, this is the best thing ever. You missed 5 days. That's wonderful. I'm not saying that. Yeah, it stinks that you missed the days. I get it. It stinks that you got sick. It stinks that you had to do a double shift. I get it. But guess what? That's reality. That's the situation. It is what it is. And if you're in a situation where it's like, now what? What do we do? Where the purpose is, how do we improve? How do we get better? I'm sorry. What a colossal waste of time to just drag through the mud, either the athlete or the situation. It is what it is. It's icy. We can't go outside. We got to go inside. But this isn't going to be the 10K tempo run we're doing. We're running around the school hallways. Yeah, we're running around the school hallways. We're getting as much out of this as we can get, which is all you can do. That's it. And if we could go outside and do the full 10K outside, I would celebrate the fact that we did everything we were supposed to do today. I can't change the rules. Like if we do everything we're capable of doing, if we try our absolute best, that's a great day of practice. You know, I mean, I think I've related this story before. The last winter I was coaching high school indoor track, we had this unbelievably cold December and January, and I remember it bled into February, and it was just really difficult. It had snowed, and it had stayed cold, so the snow was on the ground, so you were limited on lucky days to run on the roads, but they were icy, and like I said, ice is just dangerous and cruel and mean and terrible. So I just, was very limited in what we could do, and I knew I was not doing a good job coaching. I knew that I was not giving the athletes the workouts and the guidance that they needed to improve as much as they could improve, even in this situation, even in this environment, even with their snow on the ground and ice on the roads and cold, brutal weather. I knew I wasn't doing that great of a job because I kept thinking about everything we couldn't do, and that was screwing up me coaching what we could do. So what I did was I basically just said, all right, I've not been doing a great job. So it was just nice to just be honest and just be like, wow, it gave me the freedom. That honesty gave me the freedom to change the way I was coaching, because I was trying to jam a square peg in a circle hole and it wasn't working. So what I said was, you know what, rather than worrying about all that we're not doing, let's see if we can do something great with what we're given. It's really, really, really cold. We're talking single digits Fahrenheit in the Northeast. All right, I'm not going outside with these kids and having them doing really fast speed work. It's just too cold, and we can't stay outside for too long. All right, then what can we do? And I started adjusting based on the environment, based on the cards that we were dealt. And every day we were having better practices because the expectation was, hey, it's not about what we would be doing if it was 40 degrees warmer and we could run on trails. No, that is not an option. It's not an option. This is the option. This is what we're limited to. But we are going to take full advantage of these limited situations. And we started to run really, really well. And part of it was the mood. The mood was, hey, this is what we're doing today. And if we can do this, that's a great practice. And then we did it. It wasn't, hey, this is what we're doing because we can't do this. That offers no benefits. And all it does is you leave practice and you're in this comparison trap of, I know I ran hard, but we should have been doing more. I should have been running harder. And that's not going to get you where you need to be because you can't get there. That's not reality. So that's what I wanted to talk about here and now. Focus on here and now. And if you've got a resolution, if you've got goals, if you've set challenges for yourself, it's okay to look back, it's okay to look ahead, but you have to live in the here and the now. Be in the present. So that's the show. That's episode, I think, 134, right here, right now. And I hope this is what you needed to hear right here and right now. I hope that the lessons in here and, the dictionary stuff, because you should look up optimistic, pessimistic, and realistic and understand those terms. If you're an athlete, if you're a coach, if you're a teacher, if you're a doctor, you're a nurse, it doesn't matter. The point is these terms are important. These are words that we use, we think about, and sometimes we are these things and we don't really understand how powerful these things have over us. Being pessimistic, being optimistic, being realistic. So take some time, geek out, bring the dictionary into the bathroom the next time you go in there. Don't bring your phone, bring the dictionary, and then just kind of read the dictionary a little bit. And you can start with those terms, and you can kind of flip around. Look, the dictionary is an awesome book. It's a great assistant coach. I'm starting to ramble. Okay, that's the episode. Thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing the podcast. If you've never shared the podcast, rated the podcast, or reviewed the podcast, you know what? It's 2026. This would be a good time to do it. Just saying. And I'll be back next week. I hope you're back next week. Thanks again for listening. You take care of yourself. Take care of each other. And I'll meet you in another starting line. Thank you so much for listening to Coach Bennett's podcast today. And if you haven't already subscribed or set yourself as a follower to the podcast, I really hope you would. And make sure you check out the show notes, because in those show notes, you're going to find a link to Coach Bennett's newsletter and all the social media sites I'm on, like Instagram and Threads and Cameo and Blue Sky and Nope, not on that one anymore. So all the ones I am on, you're going to find it in the show notes, so check that out as well. And as always, thank you again for listening to Coach Bennett's podcast. Until next time, you keep taking care of yourself and each other.